Provider, I think it's only moving me. Once again, my heart desperation. Hear my call. Let your voice be gone. Hear our desperation. Taking every move I make. Every step I take and every breath I take. Taking every move I make. Every time I sing and every time I take. Every move I make. Every time I take. Every I take, I'm taking every move I make. Hello, hello, hello. Making a pledge and finding your joy. It's Sunday. It's good to be with you again. I've had a wonderful week. And today, we talk about choices and we talk about maybe the first time ever. Have you ever seen a birth? See a little one enter into the world. I'd like to tell you about the first birth that I ever witnessed. And I was with my friend Ginger, and Ginger invited me in, and it was her fourth baby, and this is Traven's birth. And this day, we talk about the ways in which choices that we make. Making a pledge is a way of finding our joy, finding our identity. Last week, we talked about the way in which we weren't always aware of the liquid gold that we had, the gold that was inside of us that provides and nurtures. And this week, I thought it would be nice to talk about memory making and memory meaning. And you can hear a lot of things about what happens, but if you think back to the first time you saw something, the first time you were conscious of making a choice, how did that affect every single thing that happened after that? Many years ago, 42, I think to be exact, was my first time to witness a birth, a birth with my friend. And it had been several days, and she called me and said that today might be the day might be the day, and that she wanted some ribs. And would I go by and pick up some ribs from her from this place? And I had never been there. And I said, sure, why not? And I knew that she was about to call the midwife, and she wanted me to come over and bring these ribs. And I went by to pick up the ribs. I had my daughter with me. Amber Joy was about 3 years old, and we were hanging out. And we went to the place, and the place was closed. And I thought, oh my goodness, I can't come without the ribs. And so I went home and tried to figure out what to do, and I made these ribs. I didn't tell her that it wasn't from the place she'd asked for, but I made the ribs. And Amber Joy and I went over, and she seemed a little agitated, but mainly just busy. It was a hot day. It was a hot day in July. And Much like today is a hot day in July. Today is July 19th, and I began to think about the ribs. We had been making ribs and smoking ribs, and I had said to Ginger, she said, "Stop talking about ribs. The last time I had your ribs, Traven was born." And I had forgotten that. And last night, while we were talking, she said, "Traven is in town and he's asked for your number. And maybe you could have him by. Let's give him his number." So I began to think about that birth, that first time I was at a birth, and suddenly it became all about the ribs. So back to the story of my first birth that I witnessed with my friend. And so I got there and they got the ribs, and she said, "Where are my ribs?" And I said, "Well, they're downstairs." She said, "Don't give anybody my ribs." I said, "Okay." I said, "Do you really think this will be the day that you will have the baby?" And she said, "Yes." And I went upstairs and there was laundry on the bed. And I said, where exactly do you want to have this baby? And she said, "I don't know. I don't care. It's just hot." I said, "Well, where are the kids? Where's Robert?" She said, "Well, they're at my mother's house." I said, "Well, do you think you should call him?" And she said, "Well, I think so." She said, "But I want my ribs and we need to decide where we're having this baby. And could you help me?" And I said, "Sure." I said, "Well, where?" And she said, and we looked at the bed and it was full of laundry. And she said, "Don't be giving my ribs away to anybody. I'm really hungry." And I said, "Well, do you want to eat now?" And she said, "No, no, but don't be." She said, "The ribs smell really good." And so we sat on the edge of the bed and we folded clothes. We folded all the clothes. And by the time all the laundry was folded and set neatly on the side, she decided she would sit down. And I said, "Well, I'm going to go downstairs a minute." "Where are you going?" "Don't." She said, "Well, let's check in with the midwife." And then our midwife came. And she said, "Oh, it smells like ribs in here. I want some ribs." And Ginger yelled. She said, "Don't be giving my ribs to anybody." And we went back upstairs, and my daughter, who was 3, said, "What must I do? What must I do?" She was so excited. And we called Robert. We called her husband, and he was at her mother's house with the children. He had gotten off of work to come home. And we went upstairs, and my daughter, who was 3, Amber Joy, again said, "What must I do? Where's the baby?" And the midwife looked and she said, "The baby is coming soon, but I need you to hold the light." "Amber Joy, will you hold the light? Will you sit over there? Mama Ginger wants to sit on the bed and it's all cleaned off." And Amber Joy sat on the floor and she held the light, and we looked, and there was Traven. We didn't know that he was Traven then, but he was close at hand. And the midwife said, "Well, it's coming soon. Shall we wait? Shall we wait?" She says, "No, I'm not waiting. I'm not waiting. This is time." And Amber held the light, and I held such wonder, and I watched her take a deep breath and press forward and press out. And then Traven came, and what a delight he was. What a joyous smile. He looked to the left, he looked to the right, and almost spun out gently, was made his way up to his mama's breast. And we all sat there just amazed. And then we heard the door, and we heard Robert and the children come. He said, "Are we there in time?" And they walked into the room, and there was such a glow of light and wonder, light and wonder. And we all watched. We all watched. And so 42 years later, Traven came to visit me. And he delighted in hearing the story about his mom and his arrival and my daughter holding the light, and he had his loved one with him. And she had heard about the birth story, and she said, I knew that you and Ginger were there, but I didn't know that Amber was there and that she was holding the light. And I asked Ginger, amazing it was that this day her son was coming to visit me, to pick up some ribs, to drive back to his mother. And I promised that I would set a table for him, a table that he would be welcomed. And she's told me, she says, I'm thinking about choices. He was the baby, number 4. I am thinking about choices. I chose to birth him at home, surrounded by love. I chose to offer him the best of me from the beginning. And for 565 days, he nursed. So he chose to, when he was ready to stop, we offer them our best, each one getting something different as we and they are different. Oh my, I love the table that was set. I love the seasons and the cycles that 42 years later he brought his loved one to my house and we told the story. Once again, we heard something differently today. There was room at the table. Do you remember? Do you remember? What a fond, amazing memory it was that I had that day was the first day that I saw a little one enter with joy, with thanksgiving, with a mama that had fully chosen who would be there, who would be a witness, a loving witness. And we cycled back that he came over to get the ribs for his mother and he would be driving home to deliver. We thought that was pretty funny. And choices, choices, choices. We don't always have the choice. Sometimes we think we do, but we don't really have the choice. But the day that we realized that we had a choice and that we had the power to make it happen just by showing up and easing in and watching the cycles happen. That her 4th child benefited from everything that had happened before, and that the 4th one, the last one, choices that she was able to make allowed him to be a fine and wonderful young man with a son of his own who stepped into greatness because of the gentleness and the love and the idea that he could make a choice, that he could come, that he could witness, that he could wait, that he could cycle back. And for 500, I didn't know it was that long, for 565 days, not a moment sooner, not a moment later, he decided when he was done and when he would visit and when he would show up. So, what choices have you made that there's absolutely no way that you could know? You couldn't know what the choices would be. What would the impact be 42 years down the road? That when we tell the story, and we love telling the story, especially to our children as they celebrate their birthdays of the day, who was there, what happened, how did it go, how it impacted them, which would know that this day was all about the ribs, all about the meal, the communion, the table being set, and having choices. What does a mama need? What does community and tribe look like? What does having the people around you, the community surround you that so wants for you to have what you need to have? I remember that house on Rosedale. And today I live on Rosemont. And I remember the joy that the older children, the three children, felt. They had missed the birth, but my daughter and her daughters and her sons all have an image in mind of what it's like to enter and to be right on time, to be right on time. So, what is it that you need? What is the choice that you would have? What would you give to yourself for this moment? Take a deep breath. Take a deep breath with me. Hold my hand. I am so delighted to be with you and that you would cycle back 1 year, 5 years, 42 years later, planting seeds and cycling forward and remembering a meal and remember a table that was set for you in your honor, where there was room for you for days that you could not have imagined. Absolutely no way you could have imagined that this day would be so important, that we would look back, look forward, but live holy, holy, holy in this moment. Take a deep breath. Take a deep breath with me. I am so grateful to be with you. And on the day of the birth, all of the labor and preparation that went into that day, really what we do is show up for each other. And this young man is such a gentle soul. We laughed about stories that we remembered, but it is his gentleness, his smile, his presence that continues to inspire me. I did not know that day would allow me to witness a birth, to be with a friend in a way that would affect all of us. Making a pledge and finding your joy. What is it that brings you joy? What is it that brings you joy? You are the provider, the nurturer, provider, my Adonai, my everything I need. Provider, I close my eyes and see you in my dream. Provider, I see your spirit moving over me. Oh, you are my provider, my Adonai, my everything I need. Here I call, let your voices oh, if my sound rises, praise. Everything I need. Everything I see. Everywhere I go, I believe there's after it's said and done. Oh, you are my provider, and I am everything I need. We hope that you will like and subscribe and share as we do, but know that we are always with you, that you are never alone. And have a day of wonder, a table set. Invite someone to a meal and know that years in the future, you are planting a seed of love. See you next week. We're waiting on you. I feel your spirit moving me. You are my provider, my everything I need.